Welcome to Navigating Safety, Security, Health, and Wellness in Study Abroad. This presentation will focus on safety, security, health, and wellness tips in study abroad programs from a high-level perspective and is a resource for participants, including students, faculty, and staff from U.S. colleges and universities participating in short and long-term international programs abroad. It is not meant to replace your program provider's guidelines or destination-specific information and should only be used as a supplemental resource. This presentation will cover tips and recommendations for safety and security, including general resources and tips, risk factors and strategies to reduce risk, diseases and illnesses, foreign laws and foreign countries' legal system, the Department of State and emergencies abroad, special issues, and dealing with a crisis. We will also discuss health and wellness, including how to prepare for your trip before you go, being well during your trip, and additional information to be healthy and well while abroad. The sources used for this presentation include the U.S. Department of State, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Safety Abroad First Education Travel Information Clearinghouse Project, the Forum on Education Abroad, the University of Illinois International Safety and Security Department, NAFSA, Association of International Educators, Study Abroad Resources. The information provided is not meant as legal advice and is subject to change at any time. Always consult with your program provider for advice and guidance on your specific destination. Safety and security. Customs and norms in other countries can be very different from those in the United States. Travel at home and abroad calls for several common sense precautions. Prior to embarking on international travel, it's important and essential for travelers, regardless of your experience level, to thoroughly research your destination. It's important to understand the latest developments, cultural nuances, geographical features, and historical background of the country and its regions. Do not assume that conditions remain constant and invariable in foreign countries, because circumstances and stability can change rapidly. Some general resources that you can use to prepare for your trip abroad include the U.S. Department of State travel resources. This website is very good for providing general information to other countries, passport processing information, and very good comprehensive information for planning a safe trip abroad. If there is no other website that you use before you go, please check this one out. The Smart Travel Enrollment Program, also known as STEP, is a free service to allow U.S. citizens and nationals traveling and living abroad to enroll your trip with the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate. We strongly recommend that you register your trip and your international travel with this program. Another good resource is the Department of State country-specific information and the Department of State Traveler's Checklist. Both of these websites provide comprehensive information about countries around the world and helpful information to prepare to travel internationally. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention also provides information about related vaccines, medications, and general health advice for traveling. And for information on insurance, especially travel insurance or trip insurance, please visit Travel Insured or Travel Guard for information on comparing different plans. You can always check with your study abroad program provider to see what type of insurance, if any, is included in your international program And while basic medical insurance may be included, travel insurance, trip cancellation, and/or trip interruption insurance is typically not. It is typically your responsibility to determine your level of risk and coverage. So we strongly advise you to take some time to review the type of insurance that is included in your study abroad program. Now, in terms of general guidelines and tips for safety and security, please remember that travel at home and abroad calls for taking some precautions and making sure that you are not a target of crime, because oftentimes study abroad students and travelers, especially if you have just arrived in a foreign country, can be a target of crime or at a higher risk of harm because you are unfamiliar with your surroundings. You might not speak the local language well. You can be clearly recognized as a foreigner. You may not have learned those social norms or unwritten rules of conduct yet. You are eager to get to know new people and the local culture. You may not be aware of the intentions of people around you, and you are often carrying all of your valuables when you first arrive. So you are very susceptible to increased targets of crime or harm. Some controllable factors that place students at greatest risk include being out after midnight, being alone at night in an isolated area, being in a known high crime area, sleeping in an unlocked place, being out after local curfew, or being under the influence of alcohol or drugs. Avoiding these situations and placing yourself in safe, controllable situations can help you be safe and secure abroad. You should be aware of your surroundings, remembering to pay attention to what people around you are saying. Find out which areas of the place that you are staying, the city, the town, the village, are less safe than others. While smaller towns tend to be safer, it's not always true, depending on the country that you're in. If you travel to big cities, make sure you're aware of your surroundings at all times. Know which hours of night are considered more dangerous, especially in bigger cities, but always stay and walk in well-lit areas and avoid being on alone in unfamiliar neighborhoods. Always know the local emergency number, police station, fire station phones, the equivalent of 911 when you are abroad. Do not touch suspicious items like bags or letters or packages, anything that is mailed to you from someone you don't know, and know what is normal and not normal to see on a daily basis in the areas that you frequent. Do not respond to explosions or gunfire by going to a window. Seek cover away from windows and exterior walls. Inform yourself as much as possible about your new environment, making use of as many different resources as possible. We do recommend that you don't limit yourself to U.S. resources. Contrast the U.S. information with that provided by the host institution, the host country, or other sources. It is important to make sure that you have a variety of resources around you to keep yourself well informed. Now, most of the incidences resulting in injury or fatality of students while participating in study abroad activities involve 6 different categories. And we're going to break these down and we're going to talk about tips and strategies for reducing risk in each of these categories. They include travel, transportation, or traffic accidents, the use and abuse of drugs and alcohol, sexual harassment and assault, crime and petty theft, mental health and stress, and diseases and illness. Travel and transportation is by far one of the most dangerous activities during travel abroad. We recommend that you do not drive while abroad. There are significant differences in laws and customary practice, increasing susceptibility to accidents. Instead of driving, we recommend that you either use public transportation or use responsible transportation through a reputable agency. If you do decide to drive, take note of the following. Verify that you have the appropriate driving permits for your destination. It is illegal to drive without a valid license and insurance in most countries. Not all countries accept a U.S. driver's license, but most do accept an international driving permit, an IDP. You can get an IDP from the AAA before you leave, but they do have limited validity and you may need to also have your U.S. license with you. In general, your U.S. auto insurance policy does not cover you abroad. Some policies do provide coverage in Canada and Mexico, but you'll want to check with your insurance policy before you go to see what kind of coverage you do have. And even if your policy is valid in another country, it may not meet local insurance minimums. So make sure that you do understand your coverage before you go. If you rent a car or a vehicle through a rental car company, they may offer car insurance, but it can sometimes be for a small amount or a lower amount, and it may not meet your coverage needs. So make sure that you consider buying insurance equivalent to what you have at home, or you may need to purchase additional insurance that meets your risk needs. That is something that you will need to consider if you do consider driving in a foreign country. It's also important to learn the laws of the road, both written and unwritten local practices. Sometimes those unwritten local practices are something that you'll need to learn, and it does take time. It is important to invest in GPS and a map. Be careful and be on the lookout for pedestrians. Local cultures in many countries are very different than in the US. Pedestrians may crowd the road or they may ignore pedestrian signs or right-of-way. You will be expected and you will need to know how to drive like a local, because if you panic, you are more likely to cause an accident. So make sure that before you drive, you are understanding and aware of local norms when driving. Always wear your seatbelt and obey traffic laws. And it's important to carry a mobile phone and key contact information in case you have an emergency. Now, public transportation is a very popular option in many countries. It's also a good economical option if you're traveling long distance. So some general tips to remember when you are on public transportation. Review those Department of State travel advisories and OSAC country reports to just get a better understanding of safety and security related to public transportation, and understand which bus and taxi companies are the safest or recommended and how to recognize and find them. The best thing to do with those is to ask your program provider or your host institution in country just to verify the legitimacy of those. We do not advise flagging down a cab from the roadside unless you can verify its legitimacy. You can also use apps like Uber or Lyft to make sure that you are getting a legitimate cab or a taxi. But when in doubt, just ask your program provider. They are the best source of information. You're going to want to make sure you familiarize yourself with the types of transportation available, whether it's a bus, a train, a tram, or subway, and understand their routes and schedules. Much of this can also be available online, or you can ask the local transportation office in the country for a copy of the schedule. It's also important to mind cultural norms. Pay attention to local customs regarding queuing, seating etiquettes, and giving up seats to certain demographics, such as the elderly, pregnant women, or those with disabilities. And keep in mind that some of the things that we may do or that are acceptable here in the US may not be acceptable abroad, such as eating or drinking. Sometimes those are often considered rude in many countries. So make sure that you know what is acceptable and not acceptable when you are on public transportation. Always keep an eye on your belongings. Keep your head up and out of your phone. If you do wear earbuds or headphones on public transportation, it's always a good idea to keep one earbud in your ear and another one out so that you are aware of what's going on around you. If you are going into a taxi or anything along those lines, avoid vehicles in poor shape. Try to get into vehicles that are well maintained, especially with public transportation as well. Choose vehicles that are equipped with operational seat belts. And if you feel uncomfortable getting in one, don't be afraid to say no if you feel you're unsafe. And know your route before you go and confirm a fare with the driver before you leave. Drugs and alcohol. According to the Department of State, it is important to obey the laws and regulations of the country you're visiting, especially those pertaining to drug and alcohol use. Every year, many American students are arrested abroad on drug charges or alcohol abuse because of their behavior under the influence. Ignorance of the law is no excuse, so be informed. You're going to hear that a lot, so make sure you are informed. Avoid underage and excessive alcohol consumption. Many arrests, accidents, and violent crimes have occurred because of alcohol abuse. In the United States, the legal drinking age is 21, but abroad, it is usually much lower, usually 18 in many countries. Alcohol use does contribute to some incidents of crime. It is always a good idea to go out with and stay with a group and know your limit and stop before becoming drunk or incapacitated. So even though you may not be able to drink at the legal drinking age in the United States if you're under the age of 21, but 18 or over, when you're abroad, it is always good to make sure that you are within your limits and that you know what you are being served. Avoid questionable beverages, as some homemade or illegal alcohol can be very dangerous. It can also cause long-term health issues. Don't think it can't happen to me. Students on past programs have had incidences happen. They have made poor choices due to alcohol just because maybe they haven't known what was in the alcohol. It may have had a stronger content. They may have abused drugs. They have reported they didn't know what was happening, and they have been dismissed because of those poor choices. So if you think it can't happen, it does happen because of poor alcohol choices, and we do encourage you to take this seriously. Again, ignorance of the law is no excuse, so please be informed. If you're going abroad with a pre-existing medical condition and you are taking medication with you, please make sure your prescription medication is not considered an illegal narcotic in the country or countries that you are going to. We highly recommend that you carry a letter from your doctor describing your condition and medications, including the generic names of prescribed drugs. Any medications carried overseas should be in their original containers and clearly labeled. Do not carry your prescription medications in Ziploc baggies. Do not carry them in pill containers that are like daily or weekly pill containers. If you have questions about the validity of whether or not you can take your prescription medication with you, check with the foreign country's embassy here in the U.S. to make sure your medications are not considered illegal narcotics. You can go to studentsabroad.state.gov for a listing of foreign consulates and embassy in the United States. You can also check with your program provider, although they may tell you that you do need to contact the foreign country's embassy here in the U.S. just to make sure. Remember, it is your responsibility to make sure that you are taking that prescription medication with you and that it is legal to bring that into a country. Do not accept packages from anyone. Sometimes Americans think it is a good idea to take advantage of an offer, to take a package to a country in their luggage in exchange for something else. But if you're caught, that can really not be a good thing. Ignorance is no excuse. If the package contains something that is illegal, like drugs or substances, that will not reduce the charges. You could miss your flight, you could miss your exams, or several years of your life could end up, behind bars, depending on the country, depending on the charges. So to be safe, do not accept anything from anyone, especially don't put anything in your bag. And again, do not don't import, don't purchase, don't use any illegal drugs in your possession. There can be very severe charges or consequences for use of illegal drugs or substances abroad, depending on the country that you are in. Sexual harassment and assault. We are committed to maintaining a healthy and safe learning environment that promotes responsibility, dignity, and respect. This commitment extends to all study abroad programs. Regardless of location, safety is important and should be taken very seriously. Host communities may have different cultural norms and attitudes regarding students, nationality, gender, race, sexual orientation, and many other identifying characteristics. These cultural differences are important to recognize and determine how they may impact life and safety abroad. In the U.S., there are several laws that protect students from sexual harassment and assault. Title IX, Campus Save Act, and VAWA are federal laws designed to protect you while on campus grounds from domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex discrimination. Gender-based violence between any of the following groups: men, women, transgender people, and gender nonconforming persons. Now, Title IX is a federal law that states no person in the U.S. shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. If you're studying abroad and experience sexual or interpersonal violence, you should contact the host institution, international coordinator, and the study abroad program coordinator immediately. If you are the victim of sexual assault, sexual harassment, dating violence, domestic violence, or stalking, you have options, resources, and services available to you. It is important to remember that if you are the victim of any of these things, it is not your fault. It is not your fault at all if you are the victim of any of these things. It is also important to remember to consider the immediate next steps. These are things that we recommend that you consider. Get to a safe place and contact a trusted person. If you are not in a safe place, get to one immediately or call a friend, colleague, classmate, or school administrator for help. Decide if you need medical attention. Contact emergency services if you are physically injured immediately. You should also contact a trusted friend or the school emergency contact for assistance. Decide if you wish to report the sexual assault or misconduct to authorities in the host country. Every country has different laws surrounding this type of reporting, and you will be required to follow them. The host institution and your home institution can provide support if you request it. If you decide that you would like to press charges, you'll need to make sure that evidence is collected. This can be done by a hospital or at the direction of authorities. Decide if you wish to report the sexual assault to the home institution. We do recommend and encourage you to report these types of assaults, harassment, or misconduct to your host and home institution. They can assist you with the proper reporting protocol and direct you to support and mental health resources, therapy assistance, and resources for academic success. Become familiar with your host institution, home institution, and provider sexual harassment and Title IX policies prior to departure. You should also have an emergency contact list of individuals who can help you or reach out to if an emergency arises. The most important thing to remember, do not ever be afraid to ask for help. If you have questions about Title IX or policies related to your program, please talk to your study abroad office. They will be the best resource for those questions. Now, crime and petty theft. There's lots and lots of strategies for reducing vulnerability to crime and petty theft, which in my opinion is probably the thing that we do see, one of the things that we do see as most commonly abroad. in study abroad programs. And so here are some tips that you can use to reduce your vulnerability and your risk abroad. Minimize the valuables that you bring with you. Refrain from wearing or even bringing with you or carrying expensive jewelry or large sums of cash when you're out and about. And if you are confronted by a thief, prioritize your personal safety over valuables and avoid confrontation. Follow local advice on dealing with such situations if you are the victim of theft. Stay in well-lit, populated areas. Avoid poorly lit or deserted areas. Avoid alleys. Avoid dark areas, as well as places where individuals could conceal themselves. And make sure you're using secure belongings. Keep your valuables close to your body, preferably in a bag that is not easily accessible to others. So things like a crossbody bag, a money belt, a fanny pack, especially if you're in very crowded areas, if you're in areas that are popular with tourists, that is where you're going to see a lot of crime, a lot of petty theft. So anywhere where there's a lot of tourists, areas and big cities that are popular with crowds, that is where you are going to see a lot of these kinds of things happening. It can happen very, very quickly. And you can see a lot of times it may just happen in the blink of an eye. So backpacks, carrying a backpack on your back is an easy way to get pickpocketed, especially if it's not closed. Carrying your wallet or your phone in your back pocket is a surefire way to get pickpocketed. Keep those in your front pocket or in your crossbody bag. So stay aware, be mindful of your surroundings. Again, don't keep your head in your phone, limit distractions, and only use one earbud while you're out in public. You want to make sure that you're able to see and hear while you're in those busy crowds. Okay. Keep your bags positioned in front of you, and especially when you're in crowded areas, maintain heightened awareness. Another thing that's really important, observe local attire. Try to blend in as much as possible to avoid standing out. You may want to consider dressing modestly and assimilating with that local population. Trust your instincts. Okay, trust your gut. If something feels out of place or amiss, seek advice from locals or leave the area immediately, preferably accompanied by others. Traveling groups. Okay, we always say stay with a buddy, never go out alone. So you want to aim to move in groups of at least 2 people, ideally 4, but agree on plans beforehand and stick together. It's not always possible to stick in groups of 4, but you want to stay with at least one other person, especially when you're in very, very crowded areas. You don't want to go out alone at night. And make sure that somebody always knows where you are and have that mobile phone on you. Walk with purpose, maintain eye contact, be confident, be cautious of attempting to engage with people that are attempting to engage with you. And if you're uncomfortable, just keep moving without being overly rude. You're also going to want to use taxis at night. When traveling long distances after dark, just offer that taxi service or use your phone to contact a share ride. And if you need anything, contact your emergency contacts in the home through your program provider. Now, in many destinations worldwide, there are lots of crime and petty theft scams to be aware of. Here are the most common ones. There are too many to go through, but I'm going to go through a few of them just so that you are aware. Pickpocketing. This is perhaps the most prevalent form of theft, particularly in those crowded tourist areas, also on public transportation or popular attractions. Pickpockets, they often work in teams, and the best thing they like to do is those distraction techniques. They will distract you while they try to steal something. So they will work in teams. The most popular one is, the where somebody may come up to you. They're well dressed, and they may have like a drink in their hand, and they may accidentally spill it on you. And as they're apologizing and they're distracting you, like, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry," and they may attempt to clean it off of you. Um, their accomplice will come over and maybe you put your bag on the floor, your backpack on the floor, your purse on the floor, your cell phone on the floor next to you, or just set it on the table if you're at a restaurant, and they will take it. So their accomplice will steal your belongings. They could also ask for directions, offer to take a photo, even try to be your friend, and then their accomplice will take it. Okay. Another one is fake petitions. Someone may approach you, often with a clipboard or a donation request. They're trying to distract you while their accomplice steals from your pockets or tries to take your bag. One thing we see also is ATM skimming. Also, we see that here in the US, criminals may install skimming devices on ATMs to capture your card information or PIN number. So always check and inspect those ATMs to see if they've been tampered with before you use them. Fake police officers. Some scammers will pose as police officers and ask tourists to show their ID or papers under the guise of a routine check. So if you feel, that it's not legit or someone could be claiming to be law enforcement, you could ask for official identification. And you can always be cautious if approached by someone claiming to be law enforcement. Overcharging in taxis. Always use licensed taxis. That's why we say don't use non-legitimate public transportation. Make sure that meter's running. Be wary of taxi drivers who take long routes that are unnecessary or try to negotiate a fixed fare up front. Also, counterfeit currency. If you use cash, especially in busy tourist areas, you may see counterfeit bills that are circulating, so familiarize yourself with the local currency. Check for those security features on bills. And if you have any questions, you can always, check with your program provider or a local bank. Fake merchandise is everywhere, fake tickets, so be cautious when purchasing goods from street vendors or unofficial sellers because some of those items may be counterfeit. Rental scams. If you decide to do some optional side travel, maybe on a weekend or after your program, be wary of scams like from rental companies or whatnot, where they may demand unexpected fees or deposits or misrepresent the condition of the property or the vehicle. Always go through legitimate sites online. You may see something called a gold ring scam. It's a very common scam involving someone who claims they may have found a valuable item like a gold ring or a gold necklace or something of value, and they offer to sell it to you at a discounted price. But in reality, the item is most likely fake, and their sellers just trying to scam you out of money. And the adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. Take that to heart, because if it sounds too good to be true, it typically is. And then finally, identity theft. So the same principles that you use here in the US regarding identity theft, use abroad. If you use a shared computer, make sure you log out. If your credit card information is compromised, make sure that you call your bank to cancel those credit cards. If you believe your password has been compromised, immediately change it. And make sure that you're only using secure websites. That's where you see the S at the end and an HTTPS in the URL. And contact your credit card company or your bank if you feel like your information has been compromised. You'll want to go through the fraud department at your bank, and they'll be able to help you. Mental health and stress. Now, adjusting to a new culture is a process that takes time. It can have an impact on both your physical health and your mental well-being. Whether you have a pre-existing mental health condition or experience disorientation upon arrival to a new country, it is essential to maintain good mental health to reduce risk and staying safe abroad. Now, traveling abroad often presents with emotionally challenging experiences, situations, and settings. Healthcare, medications, therapies, and supports are often different abroad. Now, if you have a pre-existing mental health condition, you should come prepared with any medication for the duration of your time abroad. Do not assume your medication will be available abroad. It's likely it won't be, or that your prescription may not be legal or available in the country abroad. So some of the tips that we have for that are you're going to want to make sure that you arrange to see your mental health care provider regularly and develop a plan to see them or arrange alternate care while abroad prior to departure. The disorientation you may feel when you settle into a new country is commonly referred to as culture shock. And culture shock often arises from lots of different factors. It can be things such as jet lag, alcohol consumption, stress, language barriers, or just exposure to unfamiliar experiences. Symptoms can include anything from depression, insomnia, fatigue, mood swings, anxiety, and increased stress. So, there are some steps that you can take to mitigate these effects. Adhere to your prescribed medications, even if you feel you no longer require them. And this is applicable to anyone, even if you do not have a pre-existing mental health condition. You're going to want to prioritize your self-care and stress management techniques. You are going to want to maintain your regular self-care practices and routines. Ensure you maintain a healthy diet. So do not eat just junk food. Maintain 3 square meals a day. Eat lots of protein. Drink lots of water, eat lots of fruit and vegetables, and make sure that you are sticking to a consistent exercise and sleep schedule. So even though you are abroad, those first couple days, you're going to be jet lagged, but once you get over there for a couple of days, you're definitely going to want to make sure that you are exercising, walking and getting a good sleep schedule, at least 7 to 8 hours a night, if not more, and making sure that you are healthy and well. Now, in general, many students and participants in study abroad programs have very successful trips abroad. But while you are abroad, here are some general tips for reducing mental health risks and managing stress while studying abroad. You're going to want to research mental health resources and become familiar with health services available in your destination country. So if you do need mental health counseling or therapy, make sure you have those arranged before you go. Stay connected, maintain regular contact with friends, family, or a support network back home. Establish a routine, very important. Create a daily or weekly routine that includes time for you and things that bring you joy, while also having a structure that helps you with your academic activities and your homework. Practice self-care, but also set realistic expectations. Studying abroad can be challenging, and it also comes with its own set of stressors. But also be realistic about what you can accomplish, and don't put too much pressure on yourself to have a perfect experience. You're going abroad for the benefits of studying abroad, but at the same time, you can only do so much in the time that you are abroad, so make sure you're being realistic about what you can and can't do. Seek social support. One of the best things about going abroad is building connections with other folks, with other students. So join those clubs, attend social events, and participate in group activities to foster a sense of community and stay active. So whether you are, going for walks, joining a sports team, practicing yoga, or just going, taking a stroll around your neighborhood, exercise can help reduce stress, improve your mood, and just boost your overall well-being. Practice mindfulness. So whether that is deep breathing exercise or guided relaxation or meditation or just reading a book, these types of things can help calm your mind and reduce your anxiety. Don't be afraid to set boundaries. Learning to say no to activities or commitments that overwhelm you can help you with your well-being, and establishing boundaries around your time and energy and personal space can also help you with reducing risks for your mental health and stress. And don't ever be afraid to seek professional help if you need it. Reach out to your counselor, your therapist, or your program provider if you're struggling with stress, anxiety, or mental health issues, and they can provide support, guidance, and resources to help you navigate those challenges. We want you to thrive during your time abroad, so don't ever be afraid to ask for help if you need it. Diseases and illnesses. Many students who study abroad may be surprised to find that disease and illnesses are a risk factor when it comes to safety and security because they tend to categorize these as health and wellness. And while this is discussed more in depth in that section, there are a few tips to remember to keep you safe and secure. Be cautious about accepting drinks and food from strangers. According to the CDC, contaminated food or drinks can cause travelers diarrhea and other diseases and disrupt your travel. Travelers to low or middle income destinations are especially at risk. Generally, foods served hot are usually safe to eat, as well as dry and packaged foods, including bottled, canned, and hot drinks. Additionally, you also want to keep yourself safe and free from sexually transmitted diseases by using protection like condoms or practicing abstinence. You can inform yourself about the types of diseases that are prevalent in the areas in which you are studying and the areas in which you will be traveling. A really great resource for this is the CDC, which we will talk about more in depth in the health and wellness section. Another good tip is to make sure you are up to date with all of your routine vaccinations and any required vaccinations for your program. This will reduce your risk for safety and security and keep you safe and secure while you are abroad and keep you healthy and well. Another good tip is to be prepared for the unexpected. Anything can happen, and there is always a risk with international travel. You can review the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention website for information about crises and being prepared for the unexpected. As an example, since we just came out of a pandemic situation, we'll use an example as a pandemic. According to the Department of State, in a pandemic, virus control measures could affect your travel. So, things such as borders closing, travel can be suspended, or travel restrictions may prevent U.S. citizens from traveling internationally. Additionally, some countries may require quarantine or testing of individuals who appear ill. These events could delay your travel or return to the U.S., so plan ahead and be prepared. A good tip, buy travel and trip insurance, including CFAR or IFAR insurance, just in case something like this happens. Now we're going to move on to information on what you should know about a foreign country's legal system and the legal system of any countries you may travel to. If you're a U.S. citizen, the U.S. Embassy or consulate of the country you are visiting is limited in what it can do to assist you if you should get into legal trouble abroad. As a foreigner in a foreign land, you are obligated to act in accordance with foreign law. Not knowing local laws can get you into trouble. Just because something is legal in the United States does not mean it is legal abroad. Most students who study abroad do not break the law on purpose, and instead they do it, or they do something illegal without knowing it. Even as a foreigner, you must obey all laws and the laws of other countries to which you are traveling. If you break local laws while abroad, sometimes the U.S. government can't do much to help you. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Remember, you are granted no special privileges or rights and will be dealt with according to standard procedure of the legal system of the host country. This is why the U.S. government encourages all visitors to foreign countries to become familiar with local laws before they visit. Most students who study abroad wind up breaking the law unintentionally, and alcohol and drug use have been associated with law breaking in many cases. Visit the U.S. Department of State for resources and information on how to stay safe and on the foreign laws and foreign countries' legal system of the country that you're visiting. Now, the Department of State and emergencies abroad is important to understand because it is important to know what the Department of State can and cannot do. The Department of State can assist U.S. citizens while abroad. Here are some tips from the Department of State. Know the relevant laws for the host country and each country you plan to visit. Visit travel.state.gov for travel warnings and consular information sheets, and read them, and visit the embassy or consulate of the information of the countries that you're going to go to for further information. If you find yourself in legal trouble in a foreign country, the U.S. Department of State can do the following and can assist you in the following ways if you are a U.S. citizen. They can visit you in jail after your arrest. They can give you a list of local attorneys, notify your family and friends, and relay requests for money or other aid. Intercede with local authorities to help ensure your proper treatment under the law and in accordance with internationally recognized standards, and protest mistreatment. They can also help arrange or at least give you a list for legal representation, but you will bear the financial burden of that. They can also protest unfair mistreatment or imprisonment. If there is a crisis situation, the U.S. Department of State will assist U.S. citizens overseas, and they have a very good document on their website, an FAQ, about how they can assist U.S. citizens in crisis situations in terms of evacuation. In a crisis situation, they will take action to evacuate U.S. citizens depending on the nature of the crisis. Typically, they will request that you will evacuate, if possible, prior to the crisis. But if not, they will work with immigration officials to be sure you have any necessary visas, vaccinations, and/or other documentation in a government-backed evacuation. But regardless of the method of transportation, if you are on a government-backed transportation evacuation because of a crisis, or who provides it, U.S. citizens and others who are eligible for U.S. government assistance are generally responsible for reimbursing the government for the cost of travel, and that is required by U.S. law. Now, the best time to leave a country is before a crisis, if at all possible. Regularly scheduled commercial transportation is always the best option, but you should have a plan of action for crisis situations that does not rely on the U.S. government for assistance. And in extreme situations, the Department of State will have consular officers at the embassy or consulate, and they will help U.S. citizens depart by working with the host government to arrange available transportation. But again, you are responsible for reimbursing the government for the cost of that travel. Now, sometimes there are questions about when traveling or residing with pets abroad. Now, if you're on a study abroad program, you should not, we advise that you strongly do not get a pet. If you are in a government-backed evacuation because of a crisis, expect that you will not be able to bring them with you on a government-coordinated evacuation. Service animals excluded. You will be responsible for coordinating that through commercial transportation. One thing that we do recommend is that you enroll in STEP to receive the most updated information regarding a crisis situation from the Department of State. And just remember that in general, assistance is not provided to family or friends who are not U.S. citizens. So again, make sure you are enrolled in STEP and visit the Department of State for what they can and cannot do in an emergency crisis. Now, a good resource if you are in a crisis situation that is very extreme and you need additional information, you can contact the Overseas Citizen Services. This is a very high-level presentation, so contact American Overseas Citizen Services and Crisis Management. They work with overseas embassies and consulates to provide emergency services to Americans abroad. They are part of the State Department. Their contact information is here on this slide. Okay, let's move to special issues. In this section, you will learn about special issues that affect students and individuals traveling abroad. Our first section is women. Women travelers may face extra health and security risks. Customs and norms in other countries can be very different from those in the U.S. Some countries have rules against certain behaviors or speech. Others may have different rules or expectations about women's clothing and appearance. Unwanted attention can range from a mild nuisance to a serious threat of danger. Acceptable treatment of women varies immensely by country or region. Clothing, appearance, and stereotypes also vary. Tight-fitting clothes, sleeveless shirts, or shorts, for example, may not be acceptable in some countries. In television and in movies, the media tends to portray U.S. women as sometimes promiscuous. To avoid unwanted attention or trouble, ask local women you meet and your program's administrators what is considered appropriate behavior and dress for women in the country that you are in. Dressing modestly or conservatively and traveling in groups are always safe bets, but if that is not your style, then just check with your program coordinator or your program provider and learn what is best. It doesn't mean that you should have to compromise your own sense of security and dignity, but it is important to learn to adapt to a foreign culture. Now, women's healthcare abroad, it is important to know that every country has its own healthcare system. When you travel, bring health items that might be hard to find where you're going, like birth control or even hygiene products. Many countries have laws that impact women's health in ways that may be different than the U.S. For example, some countries may make certain reproductive health services illegal. If you're pregnant, airlines might not let you fly in the later stages of pregnancy, so it's a good idea to have a note from your doctor saying it's safe to fly and make sure your travel or medical insurance covers pregnancy-related costs. If you are in a country that has limited reproductive or feminine health care, please discuss with your program provider, if you do need that care, how you are going to access it. On public transportation, we recommend that you arrange transport to and from the airport before you arrive. If it's not included in your program cost, do not hitchhike ever. Make sure you are always using licensed and reputable public transportation and taxi companies. Make sure that you never travel alone and avoid traveling in busy sections of train cars or on crowded buses because this can create opportunities for inappropriate or unwanted physical contact. Always be aware of your surroundings, and if you find yourself in an unwanted situation, you can consider bringing a whistle or alarm to blow. You can also consider speaking loudly and drawing attention to yourself to deter unwanted actions. Being safe is always more important than being polite. Find out the emergency services number and always know that the way women interact with men in the U.S. may not be as socially acceptable in other countries because sometimes what is considered being friendly in the U.S. can actually be considered flirting or even a sexual invitation in other countries. So personal space and boundaries may be different in the country that you're in. So be sure to clearly establish behavior that shows you're not interested if that is the case. Do not be afraid to say no, and remember, being safe is more important than being polite. Now, one thing that we do want you to be aware of is something called GBV, gender-based violence, which is violence committed against someone because of their gender. It particularly affects women and minorities all over the world. These are things like sexual or physical assault, domestic violence, human trafficking. It happens all over the world. If you are a victim of this, please contact your program provider. You can also contact the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate for assistance. Another thing to be aware of is drug-assisted rape, also known as date rape, which occurs when someone drugs another person in order to sexually assault them. In this case, again, do not accept drinks from strangers. When you're out and about, make sure your drink is only from someone you know. Cover your drink when you are not taking a drink from the drink. Be aware of how much you are drinking. And if you start to feel sick or strange, tell someone right away. And if you can, call emergency authorities. Date rape drugs can make you unconscious and defenseless. So make sure you are physically covering your drink with your hand. If you notice any unusual physical symptoms outside of, intoxication or whatnot, or if you feel strange, just, tell someone you trust right away so that nothing severe happens. And and that you are not a victim of being drugged or the victim of a date rape. If you are not with anyone that you trust, then please contact emergency services right away and they will be able to assist you. Our next category is minorities, ethnic and religious. You may not be considered an ethnic or religious minority in the United States, but by going to a foreign country, you may, in a sense, become one. There may not be a lot of U.S. students studying in the area you will be, so in a sense, you may become a novelty and stand out from the locals. Sometimes the locals' curiosity or interest or misunderstanding of you can be unpleasant. Political issues or lack of tolerance can make some groups of people a target for mistreatment or even violence in some countries around the world. Ethnic or religious issues should not be a negative factor of your study abroad experience. And just know that your lived experience may be different than those in your host community. Students or participants on your study abroad program. And that's why it is important to do a little research ahead of time to kind of survey the national sentiment and current events of your host country. We do recommend that if you have any questions or if you are uncomfortable while you're in country, always seek help from your program provider about your destination. There is a wealth of information about minoritized individuals on study abroad programs and their lived experiences. We do recommend that you take a deep dive into this issue if that affects you, or speak with your program provider or study abroad office for further assistance. If you are an LGBTQIA student, according to the Department of State, you may face special challenges abroad. There are several tips to stay safe abroad. Again, there is a lot of information out there about this specific population, and this is just a very high level, some high level tips to be aware and stay safe out there. So if you fall into this category or you know someone who falls into this category, please speak with your study abroad advisor, your study abroad office, your program provider, so that you can be safe out there. Generally, acceptance and tolerance of LGBTQIA students is increasing in many parts of the world, but some countries and individuals do remain intolerant. So please make sure to research the prevailing sentiment towards LGBTQIA issues in the country or countries that you are going to be visiting, as well as the laws related to them. Some tips are: be aware of the laws of the countries that you're visiting, and watch out for entrapment campaigns. Police in some countries do watch websites and apps, and they may also be watching meeting places. So just be aware of those tips. Be wary of newfound friends. Criminals may target or attempt to extort foreigners who are perceived to be LGBTQIA+. Some resorts or neighborhoods are welcoming to LGBTQIA students and travelers, even though the broader community might have different attitudes. The nearest U.S. embassy or consulate may be able to help if you are having problems overseas. This is especially true if you feel you cannot approach local police, or if you've already had difficulties with them. So you can tell them about any poor treatment or harassment that you have received, and consular officers will protect your privacy and not make any generalizations. If the police arrest you for any reason regarding this issue, immediately request them to contact the local U.S. Embassy or consulate, and they will be able to assist you. There are some really good resources on the Department of State website for LGBTQIA students and travelers, including the TSA Transgender Passenger Information, Traveler's Checklist, the International Gay Lesbian Travel Association, IGLTA. We also recommend that you check in with your home institution study abroad office for further resources and information. Students with disabilities have reported in the past some special issues with study abroad. Some students have reported being stared at, ignored, or unassisted. In many countries, there are no standards or requirements for providing access for the disabled. So in addition to lack of services provided to physically disabled students, there may also be a lack of services provided to those with a learning disability or those who may have a hidden disability. So some of the tips that we do have here for students: talk to your study abroad advisor and disability services office as soon as you know you want to study abroad. They can assist you with information about reasonable accommodations that may be able to be provided on the program. And as soon as you're accepted into that study abroad program and you've booked everything, speak with your airline provider and learn about services including accessible accommodations and travel during your trip and at your destination. You can also call the Transportation Security Administration's helpline at the number on your screen, and they can assist you if you need help with the security screening process. They can answer questions about screening policies, procedures, and security checkpoints. You can also check out websites such as Mobility International USA to find overseas disability organizations, or check out the Hidden Disabilities Sunflower program. It's in 230 plus airports and helps travelers who have hidden disabilities. And these are programs that can be found at information desks of participating airports. By wearing this lanyard, travelers alert staff that they may need help. So if you visit their website, they have lots of really great information. You can also check on help services available that are provided at your destination airport, and also check with your program provider for additional on-site accommodation services available to make your experience successful. The most important part is to plan ahead and to make sure that your program has the accommodations that are necessary to make your experience one that you will thrive in and be successful. Our final special issue, Population is Americans, which some people are surprised to find out is actually a special issue. The foreign policy of the United States does not always sit well with citizens of foreign countries. And in some cases, Americans living abroad can be targets of the frustrations of those individuals. So be sure to consider the nature of the political climate and relations between the U.S. and the foreign country you're in, as well as those countries you plan to visit. Some common stereotypes about Americans that portray Americans that people see abroad as loud, ignorant, cheap, rich, greedy, lazy, overweight, promiscuous, English speaking only. So there are some steps that you can take to avoid being stereotypes like this. Try to assimilate your style of dress and mannerisms as much as possible into the local norms. Try not to be an outsider, and be respectful as much as possible to avoid reinforcing those stereotypes. And remember, you are an ambassador of the U.S. and its culture, and as an ambassador abroad, you are also an ambassador of your institution and its programs, so it's your job to respect others and to act responsibly. Our next section is going to talk about crises and dealing with a crisis. You'll find information on how to better cope with a crisis and during a crisis, including understanding your emotions, keeping yourself as safe as possible, and communicating with your emergency contacts. While most students experience a safe and healthy time abroad, some are forced to deal with minor emergencies. Small emergencies abroad can seem like very big ones due to language and communication barriers and a lack of familiarity with foreign surroundings. Some of the minor emergencies students have faced abroad include illnesses like diarrhea or heat stroke, and crimes like petty theft or mugging. Before a crisis occurs, know the emergency evacuation information, and the first step in being prepared before a crisis occurs is making sure that you read through that program information provided by your home institution and program provider. If you don't have it, ask for it. You need to know where to meet and who to contact if a crisis occurs. So, if you are in a foreign country and you are in your dorm room and the fire alarm goes off, or there is a very severe crisis at that host institution, you need to know where to go, what to take, and what to do. If you don't have that information, ask your program provider for it on day one if it hasn't been provided at your in-country orientation or your pre-departure orientation. It's okay to ask for that information. It should be standard information that is provided to you as part of your pre-departure orientation. It is also recommended that you have your necessary documents in a safe and secure place at all times. You should always know where your passport is, where your identification is, where your money is, where if you need to grab things at the last minute, you can just grab them and you can get out if you need to. Consider adopting something called a personal emergency action plan for yourself. Essentially, this document is going to describe what actions take place in the event of an emergency. It can be something as simple as a list of people to call in case you get hurt, along with copies of your insurance papers, your passport, and names of any medications to which you are allergic or to which you are taking. Those are what I would call your necessary documents. Why is this important? The more support networks you have during an emergency or crisis, the more likely someone will be able to help you. It's also better to be prepared ahead of time, and it increases the chance you have of responding effectively to a crisis. Now, who's going to need a copy of your EAP? In the US, we recommend that you give it to your family, your friends, your power of attorney, and your home institution, like your study abroad office, your home institution emergency contact, for instance, like your study affairs manager or your study abroad office or your study abroad program provider. If abroad, you're going to want to give it to your primary program provider, your housing coordinator, and your emergency contact in country. Now, here's how you create an emergency action plan. Think about where you go every day. Think about where you live. Think about where you're at, okay? Write detailed directions so that someone would be able to locate you at your study abroad location or travel location in the event of an emergency. You want to draw visual aids or maps in addition to writing out those instructions. Then try to develop detailed instructions for yourself showing possible routes from your place of residence or where you work or your university program into a safe space. Things to consider. Remember, those elevators may not function, electric doors may not open in the event of emergency, so map out places to escape from in which you take the stairs rather than elevators. So note where those stairs are, note how you're going to get down from them, and consider carrying a small flashlight with you in case those lights go out or you need to get through dark hallways or stairwells. If phone lines go down, don't rely on someone coming to pick you up, and make sure you have a first aid kit available with you if that's something that you're able to do. And even though you might be with a program or group, if you get separated from them or you're not able to rely on them because of the crisis, in a very severe crisis, this EAP is going to help you rely on yourself. Now, who's going to be able to help you during a crisis situation? Of course, your faculty leaders, your home institution, your host institution, the Department of State, your parents, your family, guardians back home. But the most important resource is going to be you, because you are here, you are in country, you are the one who's going to have to be prepared. Now, when a crisis occurs, during that crisis, and you're responding to it, you're going to experience lots of feelings. This is going to be something like disbelief, anxiety, fear, depression, and shock. These are normal feelings in a difficult situation. It's important to remain calm. It's important to know that these are normal feelings, these are normal reactions, and you are, by creating that EAP, you are going to want to make sure that you have mapped out your personal way to stay safe. Now, the following list are some ways that you can be safer in an emergency crisis situation. Find and make a safe environment, maintain a basic, regimen of self-care, avoid confrontation. People may be short with one another. People may, have similar feelings. So avoid confrontation, both physical and verbal. Take one step at a time, one day at a time, and assess what you can control, what you cannot control. Ask for help when you need it, and create that support network. Some final reminders. Although most study abroad programs are trouble-free, being prepared will go a long way to avoiding the possibility of serious trouble. So become familiar with those basic laws and customs of the country you plan to visit before you travel. Stay in touch and communicate regularly with your home institution and program provider. And remember, reckless behavior while in another country can do more than ruin your experience. It can land you in serious trouble or worse. Next, we're going to talk about health and wellness. The process of wellness starts before you go abroad with a visit to your doctor. You may need to get inoculations to protect you from various illnesses before you go abroad. So before you go, check CDC's destination pages for travel health information. Make sure you have any required vaccinations for the countries you are traveling to, and talk with your physician about recommended vaccinations. Make sure you are also up to date with all of your routine vaccinations, and consider your own mental and physical health issues when applying for a study abroad program. Make sure all your necessary health information available to your program's administrator so they can assist you with any needs that you may have while abroad. Study abroad may include both physical and mental challenges for students. So make sure you establish a support network of program administrators, family, and friends who can help you. Make an appointment with your healthcare provider. That takes place at least 1 month before you leave. This is important because many study abroad programs do require a healthcare sign-off prior to departure, and that may be required to be on file with your program provider more than 1 month prior to departure. So a lot of students do not go to the healthcare provider other than that requirement. And so that may occur more than 1 month, sometimes 3 to 6 months prior to departure. But we do recommend that you may want to check in at least verbally or by telehealth if you're unable to get in person with your healthcare provider 1 month before you leave, just to check in, make sure that, especially if you have a pre-existing health condition, that all of your medications have refills, that you have the amount of medication that you need for the duration of your program, that if your doctor prescribes medication for you, that you have enough with you and that they have written you the prescription and that you do have a letter on file. Make sure that you're taking the recommended medicines as directed. Take that medicine as directed before, during, and after travel, and make sure you pack enough for the duration of your trip, plus extra in case of travel delays. Plan for the unexpected. Purchase travel insurance. Okay, cannot stress that enough. Purchase travel and trip insurance. Learn where to get healthcare during travel and ensure you have medical insurance that covers you abroad. Doing so can help you get quality healthcare or avoid being stranded at a destination. And just taking these few extra steps can prevent you from some headaches abroad. Prepare a travel health kit with items you may need, especially those items that may be difficult to find at your destination. Include your prescriptions and over-the-counter medicines in your travel kit, but you're also going to want to include things you may want to pack, such as a mask, insect repellent, sunscreen, aloe, hand sanitizer, your health insurance card. You may also want to pack some small things until you can get them in country to supply, such as first aid bandages, something like Neosporin or the equivalent if you cut yourself, um, or other medications that you may take, aspirin or Tylenol if you get a headache or whatnot, and something just to get you through the first couple of weeks while you're in country. Now, during your trip, you're going to want to watch for changes in your mental health because travel and adapting to a new culture and lifestyle can be stressful, and bringing on new mental health issues or making existing ones worse if not treated. Make sure you follow safety and security guidelines when you're in your host country. And very important, carry a photocopy of your passport and entry stamp, but leave your actual passport in a safe or other secure place. So a good recommendation for this is take a picture of your passport. So take a picture of your passport on your phone and then leave your actual passport either in your dorm room or your residence, somewhere safe and secure. Also recommend emailing a copy of your passport to yourself, and leaving a photocopy of your passport and your contact information in your luggage. If your luggage gets lost, sometimes if you have that uh, tag on your luggage with your identification, if it falls off and they don't know where your bag belongs, they may open it. And if you have your contact information in there, they'll be able to get it to you. But if you have a copy of your passport in there as well, and you lose your phone or you lose your bag, at least you'll have a backup copy of that. Carry contact information for your program provider as well as the U.S. Embassy or consulate with you. Again, don't wear expensive clothing or jewelry. I wouldn't even bring it with you. You want to avoid risk of theft or loss, and always use a reputable travel guide or tourism company if you're going to book optional side travel, or any kind of adventure travel. And if you're going to book adventure travel, a good tip is to make sure that your travel insurance company is going to cover that. A lot of travel insurance companies nowadays may not cover that or any kind of injury that comes along with that, so you may want to double check before you purchase any type of adventure travel. Don't misuse alcohol or drugs to avoid health consequences and being a target for crime. And use condoms, protection during vaginal, oral, or anal sex to reduce your risk of sexually transmitted infections and diseases. Always choose safe transportation and wear a seatbelt. Motor vehicle crashes are the leading cause of death among healthy travelers. Also, be alert when crossing the street. Look left, left, or right, left, right, depending on which country you're going to, and choose safe food and drink. Contaminated foods and drinks can cause travelers diarrhea and are the leading cause of diseases abroad, which can disrupt your program and your travel. Additional tips include, can you drink the water? Many travelers do drink bottled water. The water in Western Europe is generally safe to drink, but ask your program provider for specifics. Food safety, poor refrigeration, undercooked meat, and roadside outdoor vendors can pose problems related to food contamination. So if you do get sick, remember to drink plenty of fluids and stay hydrated. And as with any illness, consider seeing a doctor if your condition worsens. You will need to give your body time to heal and adjust. For prescription medication, it can be quite difficult to obtain common over-the-counter medications found in U.S. pharmacies, so don't count on being able to fill your prescription abroad. You're going to want to make sure you bring enough with you for the duration of your program. So make sure you have your doctor's prescription and letter, and also include a copy of your prescription for glasses or any contact lenses. Bring an extra pair of glasses with you as well. Make sure you are exercising and keeping your body healthy and well. Make sure that you understand you're going to be doing a lot of walking. Wherever you go, you are going to walk more than you think you are going to. Without access to a car, you are probably going to be doing quite a bit more walking than you do here in the US. So wear a good pair of comfortable walking shoes. Make sure that your program staff and your emergency contacts at home and in country have your emergency contact information and are well informed of your whereabouts and activities and have copies of your important travel documents. During your trip, if you are traveling by air, make sure you drink a lot of non-alcoholic fluids, stay away from caffeine, eat light, and stretch often to avoid jet lag. When you are in country, whether you are traveling by air, bus, train, taxi, or car, please remember what the safe modes of travel are and in the countries to which you plan to travel. Taxis and public transportation generally provide excellent options of transportation. And as we discussed earlier, we do recommend that you do not drive abroad. As a reminder, the use and abuse of alcohol and drugs abroad can increase the risk of accident and injury. Violating drug laws abroad may result in serious consequences, so be sure that you are aware of the laws in the countries that you are visiting regarding this. Also, don't forget to stay in touch. Don't forget to connect with those back home. While it is always great to meet new people, connecting with friends and family back home on a regular basis is important to maintaining a routine and keeping in touch. And set a good example and be respectful of others' well-being, culture, and mental and physical health. And always encourage others to do the same. With planning and common sense, your study abroad experience can be safe, secure, and a healthy one. Speak to your program provider or home institution with any questions or concerns. Thank you for listening, and we wish you safe and happy travels.